Happy holidays, LAN Party gamers. And for this holiday season, I got myself a little nostalgic. And I'm revisiting a gift I got from my parents almost 30 years ago. This is the Sega Game Gear, my original Sega Game Gear that I got as a present from them shortly after it had actually come out. This was the envy of anybody with a standard Game Boy. At least at the start, there were very few kids that had a Sega Game Gear where I was. And so having a full-colored, practically console experience at the palm of your hand anywhere you went was pretty spectacular. I also have about 5 games that go along with it, including a couple of Sonic titles. The only problems that I've had with the Game Gear is, as many have, the capacitors do go bad on this system, and if you take it apart, those caps are very small and rather difficult to replace if you don't know what you're doing. And even if we do fix everything that's wrong with it, as right now it does not have any display other than a faint backlight, you still have to put 6 AA batteries in the unit in order to power it on, or this giant wall wart, which really does turn it into a home console. So if I'm not going to be using it as a regular Game Gear, well, what are we doing with this old thing, and why did I bother getting it out of storage? Well, other than it being a nostalgia fest for me and remembering my first handheld unit, we have something here that we got all the way from the UK. And you might be asking yourself, what's in the box? Well, let's dump it out and take a look. This is the Zega Mame gear. And as you may hear from the name, it is a Mame and emulation replacement board for the inside of the Game Gear. We've got a drop-in board that's supposed to use all the same spacing and screws of the original Game Gear, but in giving you a better screen, more buttons, and outfitted with a Raspberry Pi. We opted for a slightly cheaper model. This is the Raspberry Pi 3A version as opposed to the 4. That way we can have an easier time finding it, because Raspberry Pi 4s at the time of filming are a little bit hard to find. And we also had to find the extra buttons. So we got those from Handheld Legend. This unit also came with all the accessories we need to get started, and that's what we're going to do today on this little Christmas break special. So let's get building. So the first thing we've got to do is take apart our original Game Gear. Now, some things that I've done to start this task off is I've already preloaded my Raspberry Pi 3 with a 32 gig SD card and loaded all the ROMs and emulators that I'm going to need for the games that I actually own in real life. So if you see a game that we're going to be demoing during this build, just note that I do have these games in real life. Anybody who's come over has seen the collection of Super Nintendo, N64, Dreamcast, and of course, Game Gear games. So no stolen intellectual property here. With that out of the way, let's talk about what this kit includes. You've got, of course, the main board, which includes the LCD screen, the button pads, and all the connectors needed in this build. And we've got 2 additional daughter boards. That consists of the audio board, which is going to give us our headphone out, our speaker out, as well as our volume, and our USB-C charging block. This is a safe off charging block, which means when I hit the power switch, it doesn't just disconnect the power from the batteries or the external power. It actually shuts the unit down in a safe way, because we are running a Linux distribution here, RetroPie. So we want to make sure that we have something that turns it off without just shutting it down all at once. So this will do all of that with one click. It also charges with USB-C and we also have a couple batteries. So we'll get to the batteries in a moment. They did not include batteries in the kit because of shipping to the US. So keep that in mind if you are ordering outside of the UK where this is from. Along with that, we ordered a new speaker to give us a little bit better performance for the compared to the original speaker that's in the unit. That'll plug into the soundboard directly. He also included a couple back plate panels for what used to be the AA battery covers, because I have, as many have, lost theirs. So that was very nice of him to include that for us, as well as some button jigs and a couple 3D printed parts here that are going to be for the new button configuration. And that's what comes in the Zarcade kit, the Zega Mame gear kit. Now, in addition to buying this kit, I was also informed that in order to use the extra 2 buttons on the kit, we're going to need to buy some more button pads. So I got a kit that includes up, down, left, and right, and some additional buttons here that will go onto the unit, and we're actually going to have to drill 2 holes to increase our front button count to 4 total front buttons. So that kit actually comes from Handheld Legend, and it includes some stickers and things like that. But the most important thing are the silicone buttons and then the plastic buttons that go on top of those. So those will stick through the unit. We'll just have to drill those out. Last and not least, of course, is the ability to make this a portable unit. We have purchased a US shipping supplier for our batteries. We got these off of Amazon, and they are 103450 3.7 volt 1800 mAh batteries that should fit directly into the slots on the charging board. And then these will go nicely into the AA battery compartment. We just have to drill a hole, I believe, in one of them in order to get the cable to go to the charging block. And these should fit nicely, yeah, right in there. Just have to remove a couple of the springs. So the first step, obviously, we're going to have to dismantle the old Game Gear and set apart the old internals, and maybe somebody can use them for something. Okay, we're using our iFixit kit for this teardown. And the first thing I'm going to do is remove my Sonic Chaos cartridge. Put that away. And we're going to need to take out the security bit. Luckily, it is a bit that is included in my kit. I believe it's a 3.5 or maybe a 4mm bit. Yep. So that's easy enough to remove. Then take that out and save that to the side. The other bits in here are just Phillips looking bits, so we'll go ahead and find a nice small Phillips bit and unscrew the rest of them. Okay, once we have these larger screws undone, there are also screws inside of the battery wells in the corners here and here. Just fine. Luckily, all these screws seem to be the same length, which is nice because it shouldn't matter in what order I put them back. And just like that, this thing has come apart. So now we just have to remove the rest of the internals. A few smaller screws around the outside of the board. Some wires to clean up. We're going to be removing the majority of these springs here that hold in the AA batteries. And pretty much everything in here is going to get taken out. Starting with removing these cables here. They're just plugged into the boards on either side. So that frees up the back plate so we can set it aside for now. And at this point, we're just going to be removing everything you see here. So we'll be back as soon as we're done with that. And with all the screws removed and loosened, we can go ahead and take out the motherboard and backlight and screen from the original unit, leaving us with just the original pads and buttons, which we will be using a lot of. We're apparently going to be reusing a lot of these screws too, so make sure not to lose them, as the screw placements are also important. Next, we're going to be taking out the speaker here. It looks like it's held in with some kind of retention bracket here, and what we have to do is find a way to remove that without hurting the plastic underneath. Let's take a look and see if this is how this cable might be used. So this is the new audio board, and it replaces obviously the one that was in the system, and it looks like it doesn't quite fit. This is the plug from the old speaker, and this is the socket for the audio board that we just got, and it doesn't quite fit together. So it is a good thing that we went ahead and got a new speaker, as it does have the correct connector for the new audio board. So we'll continue trying to loosen this up. No more cutting corners on that. What I am going to do is take another look at this and see if there isn't a way I can pry up this retention bracket without hurting the case underneath it. And there it comes out. Here comes the retention bracket, and if we lift up on the cable, hopefully the speaker just comes out. There it is. So there's the old speaker. Now we're back to the rear panel of the original case, and there is quite a bit in here we have to remove as well. We have the old audio board, the old power board, which includes the charging port and power switch. The shield here is for both the internals as well as the cartridge bay, and we won't need that anymore because the cartridge bay is not going to be a part of this build. So we'll go ahead and take the screws out, as well as any other screws we see in this unit, to get all of the old parts out as well. And the power board is in the old screws. As you can get power out. My space is holding in. Or just right there. Yeah, the back clip here. Do that. Go. And there's our old power board. And lastly, we've got our old soundboard to remove. And there's the old soundboard removed. So we're going to put all the old pieces aside and prep the case for installation. All right, as you see, we've got all the parts sort of placed in separate areas. We've got the old stuff, we've got our Raspberry Pi we can now break into, and then we've got all the new stuff over here. And now comes the exciting part. We're going to go ahead and assemble the unit as a whole. Now, I've already bench tested this to make sure that it all works before putting it in there. And what we're going to do is do a test fit before we actually screw it in, because I need to know where to drill the other two buttons we showed you at the start. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually place the screen unit in the chassis to make sure everything lines up to where it should, and to see where those other holes will go. And then we'll get to dremeling. All right, as you can see, there are only 2 buttons in the original case for the front of the unit, but the PCB allows for 4. So In order to trace out and cut the holes in the correct spots in the original, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a jig out of the PCB here, which I should be able to do by tracing over the PCB to find where the buttons are. So there they are. I don't know if that's easy to see, but there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now we just have to find the appropriate drill bit and put the faceplate in the drill press to get a nice even press into the plastic so we don't break it or screw up by trying to hand drill it. And I went ahead and taped the drawing we did so that the light can shine through, and I know exactly where to tape it down, and I know exactly where to cut the holes. So now we get to drilling. And there's 2. Now that we've got the 4 holes in, we need to make sure that the outsides here are nice and clean. So I'm going to do that with the Dremel and open them up ever so slightly as well to make sure that the buttons fit in there cleanly without snagging on anything. Well, with the holes drilled, we can finally continue our assembly. Right after we remove the top springs from the back side, we're going to go ahead and leave the bottom spring attached to the rear of the unit here so that they better hold our new batteries in without them jostling around while we are using this on the go. So we're going to go ahead and do that now and take out the top springs on both of the AA battery compartments. But as you can see, our sketch and then drill idea worked great. If we line this up with the PCB, quite happy how that came out. On the rear assembly here, we've got the new audio panel here. So it's going to slot in to here and go like that. There we go. So the audio cable from the speaker will plug into here, and then this will plug into the main board. Then the power board goes in a little something. Great. And it comes with a new clippy here to hold this piece down. So we'll install that right there. All right, so now that we've got the modules in place, we need to screw them down, and that's why we saved all of the little screws that we reclaimed when we took out the old stuff. So anywhere that we see a hole in the new PCBs, we're going to go ahead and screw down into the plastic where they used to go. While we're in this side of the board, I went ahead and put in our first battery here, smushed it against the spring that we left in, and then routed the cable through the hole that used to be for the old spring. That can go directly into the corresponding battery plug here on the back of the power PCB. However, the other battery we bought will have to be modified to have a longer cable. So I'm going to have to cut and solder some longer cable onto that and make sure that that's all working well before we install it into the unit. Luckily for me, the cables I snipped from the existing AA battery compartments were perfect length already and the correct gauge to reach it. So the only thing I needed was a soldering gun and some heat shrink and a little bit of patience. And we're going to get this installed right now. Already got the back plate on the other one, and pretty soon we'll have this battery installed as well. So here are the soldered attachments cut off, and it's kind of a good thing too, because all I had to work with was some very small holes, which I snipped out using some side cutters. So I stringed the cable through prior to soldering the ends on, and that helped me route the cable even easier. So kind of a blessing in disguise, otherwise I would have had to drill a much larger hole to get the connector through. So we're going to button this up, and that should be it for this side of the device pretty much. If we take a look at the original binder clip here that held the speaker in, it seems to be ever so slightly different in size to the one that we have coming from the kit. If I line up the corners here, the other two holes don't quite line up. So it's very close. But as you can see, the overlap here, the other clip seems to be a slightly larger. So we're going to use the original clip, which is why we kept everything. Lined up, we can go ahead and install this jig here that will keep the buttons from going in or out too far and mimic the ones that were already in there. And they go something like that. There we go. And then our buttons will fit into those slots there. While we have this open, we'll go ahead and hot glue the speaker in just so it doesn't rattle around and cause any additional problems, so we don't have to open this back up. As well as the cable for our extra long battery here. And now we just need to find all the screws that are going to hold this in place, as well as installing our Raspberry Pi. And that'll just flip right on the GPIO ports at the bottom here. Before we throw this in here, there's a couple steps you want to take. There is a select button here that will go in this corner above the 1, 2, 3, and 4 buttons. And then there obviously, well, you'll want to remove the protective film now off of the LCD. Very nice looking. And this will just drop straight in. Kind of a delicate dance to make sure it can get in without falling off. Kind of have to hold it there with your finger as you place the board in. There we go. Make sure all the holes line up, which they do. So we made sure that all the buttons feel good, that they're not going anywhere, and that the screws are down very well on all 4 corners, that the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi are all plugged in correctly and very well pushed in. And now it's time for the moment of truth. Really helps if it's right side up. So make sure when you line this up that you've got the power side with the USB-C connected to the power side, and then the audio side with the audio headphone jack over here with the audio side. Luckily, they have dummy-proofed this. You would have a hard time plugging them into the incorrect side. So we're going to start with the speaker cable here, and I'm just going to go ahead and plug that in. Again, it only goes in one way. Very well. And then the audio cable on the other side will go in like this. And then the power cable will go in over here. So we'll try that before we button it up. So here's the power switch. And the batteries are dead, of course. So we got to get a charger out here. So we're going to show some gameplay off on the Game Gear here from games we have in real life, like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which we have a physical copy of, as well as Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. So we've got our favorite setup here. Here's Sonic the Hedgehog 2. See if it works. Well, it sure sounds like it works. Well, this is already bringing back memories. Oh wow, it sounds fantastic. Well, this is definitely above and beyond what the original one would do, so I'm already happy with this performance. The buttons are the same buttons, so it feels just like I'm playing on a Game Gear still. Happy about that. All right, let's try some games that are a little different for what this platform should do. Let's try a Super Nintendo game. So we're going to press the Start and Select button to go back to the main menu. And we're going to go down to Super Mario World for Super Nintendo. All right. Let's try it out. So this one here, we should be able to use all 4 buttons. Let's try it out. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 is that. 2 is a regular jump. 3 looks like it's the sprint button or the flower button. And it doesn't look like 4 really does anything. We've got our select button, which should drop items down from the top. We'll try that out. We might have to rebind these because it is a little awkward here. So we hit select. Yep, the select button does in fact work on the side of the unit. So that's really cool. So this is playing really great. I'm really happy. Let's try something else a little bit more ambitious. Super Mario 64, which again, we have a physical copy of in real life. And we'll give it a go. Now, I'm going to have to figure out the mappings for this, because this is going to be a little interesting here with a D-pad, 4 face buttons of starting to select, but we will make it work. Might have to bind select to Z or something to that effect. But there's Mario 64 running in an emulator on a Game Gear. I'm pretty happy about that. I'm not sure why we're not getting sound, or if we are, it's very quiet. Let's see if this works. And look at that, we're playing Mario 64. There's no jump button. So we'll have to figure that out, but that's pretty cool. Well, thanks to everybody who helped me out with this, especially our friends over in the UK who designed this. You can find the information to buy a kit from them in the description below, as well as all the other things that I needed to get, like the batteries, the extra buttons, etc., in the description. So please follow those links. And it was a real fun project. It did challenge me here and there, but for the most part, it was straightforward. You just have to make sense of what was included and take your time with it. I'm going to be excited to set this up and play some of the games that I haven't had a chance to play because they've either been in storage or otherwise I'm on the go, and this is going to be a great way to take those games with me. So again, thanks for watching, and I really enjoyed putting something like this together, and I hope you did too. And if you're going to get one and you found this guide helpful, let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe. We'd love to see you at one of our live events. To see this in person or come to one of our LAN parties, make sure you sign up on our meetup at sandiegolan.net. Anyway, have a great day, and a Happy New Year.